After giving birth to a stillborn child, I was overcome with grief until my husband brought home a boy. I cherished him as my own, doting on him like a precious jewel. The boy proved worthy, excelling at a young age to become the top scholar in the imperial examinations, bringing great honor to our family. Later, having risen to the highest position in the court, he framed my maternal clan for treason, leading to the execution of over 100 members of the Liu family. As I faced execution, my husband brought my cousin to witness my death. Our son called you mother for over a decade. Though you die, it was worth it. The executioner's blade fell cleanly upon my neck. When I opened my eyes again, facing the child my husband had brought, I still smiled and said, "Come here, my dear child. From now on, your mother will cherish you dearly." I found myself back at the time 3 years after marrying Xia Yuanhui. He brought home a little boy and said to me, "Yunwan, ever since you gave birth to Ninger, you've wept every day. This child was found begging on the road home 2 days ago, after your mother went to the Hugu temple to light an eternal lamp for Ninger. Such a coincidence, perhaps Ninger sent him to honor you in his place. In my past life, I carried a child for 10 months, only to give birth to a stillborn. For half a year after delivery, I remained consumed by unbearable grief, until Xia Yuanhui brought Xia Jingxing before me. He was about 3 years old, as pure as jade and adorable. Upon seeing me, he sweetly called me mother. That single word mother twisted my heart into knots. I immediately pulled him into my embrace. I believed this child was heaven's compensation for losing Ninger. Now, looking closely, this child is clearly as delicate as jade, with skin as smooth as silk. How could he be a beggar child found by the roadside? How laughable that I believed it in my previous life. Mother. A timid, babyish voice sounded, coming from a small child with rosy lips and white teeth. I couldn't help but recall my past life, when the entire Liu family, 161 souls, perished because of this very mouth. Back then, he planted false accusations to sow suspicion in the emperor's mind, leading to a search of the Liu residence. Sure enough, beneath the crooked tree in the Liu garden, they unearthed the emperor's birth chart. It was carved into a wooden sculpture, soaked in blood, a chilling sight. The emperor detested witchcraft above all else. The entire Liu clan was immediately imprisoned, awaiting execution. The Marquis of Loyal Valor's mansion, credited with the denunciation, earned the emperor's consideration to pardon me, already married into the Marquis's household. But Xia Jingxing, the foster son I had cherished and raised as my own, personally accused me of complicity in my birth family's rebellion, even identifying the carvings on the wood as my handwriting. His act of sacrificing kin for justice deeply pleased the emperor. The Liu family's downfall paved his final step to the pinnacle of power. From then on, the Marquis of Loyal Valor's household flourished like flowers in full bloom. The Marquis remarried his cousin, and their family of 3 was reunited. Yet the blood of the entire Liu family on the execution ground could not be washed away even by 3 days and nights of torrential rain. Yunwan, shall we raise Jingxing under our name? Seeing my indifference to Xia Jingxing's call of mother, Xia Yuanhui spoke. Jingxing? A lofty mountain inspires awe, noble deeds set an example. Truly, Xia Yuanhui had chosen a fitting name for his own son. I concealed my clenched fists within my sleeves, forcing a faint smile. I am quite fond of this child and would raise him as my legitimate heir. Yet the name Jingxing carries such noble weight, it may prove difficult to live up to. I proposed renaming Xia Jingxing to Xia Ji, with the childhood name Jir. Xia Yuanhui's face darkened at these words. Xia's mother flew into a rage. If Jing'er is to be raised as the legitimate heir, he will be the future heir of our Marquis's household. How can he bear the name of a pig or a dog? If word spreads, what dignity would remain for the loyal and valiant Marquis's household? Uncharacteristically, I refused to yield. Who in the capital doesn't know my Ninger was stillborn? Naming Jir with a humble name is my hope for his survival. If you fear it will sound awkward later, we can change it when he passes the scholar exam at 10 or so. If you refuse my chosen name, I won't take this foster son. Otherwise, if he dies young again, it will only break my heart. With that, I began to sob softly, crying out the name of my long-lost Ninger. Xia Yuanhui and Mother Xia were initially unwilling to yield, but to have their illegitimate son formally recognized as a legitimate heir, they had no choice but to concede this point. In the end, they agreed. After all, giving a child an unlucky name was hardly unusual, especially since it could be changed once he passed the scholar examination. After the Xia family opened their ancestral hall and formally registered Xiaixi as the legitimate heir, I requested to return to the Lu residence for a few days. Xia's mother was somewhat surprised to hear I intended to go back to the Lu mansion. In my previous life, I rarely returned to the Lu family. Even when my elder brother's second daughter, Anur, was born, I didn't go back to see her. Truthfully, I longed to return, but Xia Yuanhui disapproved. Back then, when I insisted on marrying Xia Yuanhui, my father refused to consent. My elder brother, unwilling to see me at odds with my father, secretly aided Xia Yuanhui's promotion. Later, this matter was maliciously twisted by schemers, damaging Xia Yuanhui's reputation. After our marriage, he refused to visit my family and disliked me returning to my natal home. In my past life, I prioritized his feelings, forcing myself to forget my family and devote myself entirely to the Marquis' household. Reborn. The thought of the Lu family members dragged into my downfall at the execution ground, especially the innocent, unaware Anur, tore at my heart. This life, I cannot betray them again. After years of absence, as the carriage halted before the Lu residence gates, unease stirred within me. My last meeting with my parents and elder brother in my previous life had been within prison walls. By then, my mother's eyes had already been blinded, said to be from weeping day and night and longing for me. This lifetime, I didn't know if it was still in time. Lost in thought, I suddenly heard the gatekeeper's excited shout. The young mistress has returned. She's home. Walking through the main gate, the Lu residence remained unchanged from my memories. Just past the flower-adorned archway, Mother came out, supported by my sister-in-law and the old nurse. Her temples were streaked with gray, her eyes cloudy, yet she could still see. Holding her hand, tears poured down my face. Mother and my sister-in-law wept too, yet none uttered a word of reproach. Only, "You're back. You're back." I stayed at my maternal home for several days. After adopting Xia Jingxing in my past life, I had returned to the Lu residence once merely to arrange his initial education. My father served as the grand tutor to the emperor. For a 3-year-old's initiation, hiring an ordinary tutor would have sufficed. But I always wanted the best for him. For his sake, I was willing to exert tenfold effort with a willing heart. This lifetime, I did not bring Xiaixi back to the Lu household, nor did I ask my father to arrange for renowned tutors for him. Upon returning to the mansion, I did bring back 4 beautiful young maids, all around 6 years old. From now on, the 4 of you will serve the young master diligently. The next day, Xia's mother sought me out, her displeasure evident. As Jinger's legitimate mother, you neither raise him personally nor entrust him to a proper wet nurse. How can assigning him 4 little maids suffice? Hearing this, I frowned. Mother, you've made a mistake. It's Jir, not Jinger. If you find my arrangement unsatisfactory, Mother, perhaps we should visit Tinglong Courtyard to see how Jir fares under the care of these 4 maids. I led Xia's mother into Tinglong Courtyard. Sure enough, from afar came the laughter of the young maids playing with Xiaixi. A child's laughter is most infectious. Hearing it, Mother Xia's expression brightened slightly, though she still voiced her concern. At Jier's age, children are about to begin their studies. If he keeps playing like this, it might distract him from his studies. I shrugged indifferently. How old is Jier? At this age, eating well and sleeping soundly are what matter most. If he rises early every day to study, how could his mind develop properly? Madame Xia looked doubtful. Really? Even my father never encouraged early education. A child's health is the foremost priority. In my past life, in that dark, damp dungeon, Xia Jingxing crushed my jaw. You are utterly vile. For your own selfish desires, you forced me to rise daily for lessons. You couldn't even tolerate my affection for a maid. From childhood to now, not a single day has passed without my hatred for you. I've long wished for your death. In this life, I would repay him double for what he desired, ensuring he never again endured hardship or toil. Xia Qi's arrival ended my endless weeping over the stillborn child, and Xia Ji himself gradually adapted to life in the Marquis's mansion, thanks to the beautiful young lady who played with him every day. One day after dinner, Xia Yuanhui mused that the loyal and valiant Marquis's household has prospered is all thanks to our ancestors' blessings. I've decided to return to my hometown to observe 3 years of mourning. Would Yunwan be willing to accompany me? In my previous life, I was wholly devoted to raising Xia Jingxing and refused to go, feeling guilty for not being able to accompany and care for Xia Yuanhui. Only in this new life did I realize Xia Yuanhui never intended to mourn with me at all. Returning home was a pretext. His true aim was to enjoy a private world with his cousin, Pei Zhener. They became a heavenly couple, free and carefree, while I raised their child. Such a wonderful arrangement existed in this world. Knowing full well Xia Yuanhui's calculations, I still feigned regret at not being able to accompany him to care for my husband. It matters not. Raising Jier is also a great responsibility. Only, these 3 years ahead without Wanner by my side will be lonely indeed. Xia Yuanhui finished speaking and made a move to pull me into his embrace. He was skilled in such tender gestures in my past life. I'd relished them. Now, however, I instinctively took a step back. I caught a chill yesterday and have a slight cough. Soon after, Xia Yuanhui set off for his hometown. Before departing, he earnestly admonished Xia Qi to study diligently, promising to bring honor to the family in the future. I couldn't help but smile. Back when Xia Yuanhui sought to marry me, he still harbored ambitions for officialdom. Now, with an heir, though barely 4 years old, he was eager to shed the responsibilities of being the loyal and valiant Marquis. In my past life, he did indeed achieve his desires. But this time around, I intend to let my little Ji experience what true maternal love feels like. Craving candy? I buy it for him. Want to sleep in? I let him sleep in. Loves fighting crickets? I find the best cricket fighting servant to play with him. Hit his tutor? I send a big red envelope as an apology. Tutor stormed off? That just means he wasn't good enough. I'm confident I can find a tutor worthy of teaching my little Jier. Loves playing with little maids? Who doesn't adore sweet-smelling girls? Mother Xia had feared I might mistreat her grandson, but she never imagined I'd be such a loving mother. We lived in blissful harmony at the Marquis's residence, while Xia Yuanhui, observing morning rites back home, found no longing for his former life. He left saying it would be 3 years, but by the time he returned, Xia Qi was already 8. 8-year-old Xia Ji had rotten teeth, was plump and sturdy, and barely knew his letters. When his unfamiliar father returned to the mansion, the boy refused even to pay respects, insisting he had a cricket fighting match scheduled with friends. Only after I coaxed him with promises of better crickets tomorrow did he reluctantly enter the main hall. Were it not for Xia Ji's lavish attire, Xia Yuanhui scarcely recognized him as his son. He bore none of the refined dignity expected of a young nobleman, obese and slovenly. Clutching a cricket cage in one hand, he faced his father with casual disregard, showing no trace of respect. Xia Yuanhui flew into a rage on the spot, flinging Xiaoxi's cricket cage aside. After testing his knowledge, he slapped Xiaoxi across the face. As dashing as Xia Yuanhui had been upon leaving, he was equally furious upon seeing his son. He never imagined that I, a talented scholar from the capital whose father served as grand tutor and whose elder brother held a position in the Hanlin Academy, could raise his son to be so utterly ignorant. Yun Wan, is this the legitimate son you've raised? His eyes blazed crimson, a mix of disbelief and fury. I rushed forward to embrace the beaten Xiaoxi, clutching him as my precious little darling and weeping together. A doting mother spoils her child, as long as I acted excessively indulgent. Xiaoxi's stupidity would be excusable. The reality was far worse than anticipated. Leaving Xia Yuanhui trembling with rage, he ordered me to reflect on my failings in the Lanting courtyard. From now on, Xiaoxi's upbringing would be his personal responsibility. A few days later, he even took Xiaoxi to the Huigu temple, claiming it was to have the abbot open the boy's wisdom root. Opening wisdom roots was a pretext, the real purpose was to bring him to meet his biological mother, Pei Zhen'er. Alas, they were in for disappointment. The child I raised amidst brocades and silks had absorbed nothing else but deeply ingrained notions of social standing, family lineage, and the distinctions between legitimate and concubine-born offspring. If she wished to reclaim her son, she must first consider what she could offer him. Sure enough, Xia Yuanhui and Xiaoxi returned from Huigu Temple looking grim. After personally raising Xiaoxi for several days, Xia Yuanhui grew so furious he kicked over his study desk. Meanwhile, Pei Zhen'er could no longer sit still. She had been waiting for her son to succeed so she could become a proper marquise. Now, not only was he heading down the path of a wastrel, but he also despised her lowly status and refused to draw near. If this continued, bearing this son would have been for naught. Her anxiety grew with each passing thought, and she promptly packed her belongings to knock on the Marquis's mansion gate. Pei Zhen'er entered the estate as the Marquis's niece, claiming she had come to seek refuge with the old lady. In her previous life, she had often stayed at the Marquis's residence. When I forced Xie Jingxing to practice calligraphy and urged him to strive for progress, Xie Jingxing would sometimes throw tantrums. She would then stew a nourishing broth and send it to him. After drinking her soup, Xie Jingxing would invariably calm down. For this, I had once been deeply grateful to her. Seizing the opportunity, she proposed becoming my sworn sister. As merely a cousin of the Marquis's household in the capital, she stood to gain marriage prospects by bearing the title of my sworn sister, a distinction befitting the renowned scholar lady I was. I readily agreed, even promising to bestow 30 dowry chests upon her marriage. Yet later, she used this bond to become the second wife of the loyal and valiant Marquis. After my death, my entire dowry became hers. In my past life, I even arranged her marriage for her. Only at death's door did I realize she had been waiting all along for my position. This lifetime, I won't give her that chance. Our dynasty's law states, a concubine cannot be elevated to primary wife. Not long after Xia Yuanhui returned to the estate, it was his mother's 60th birthday celebration. He had come back from guarding the ancestral tomb in his hometown specifically for this event. Busy with the birthday preparations, I had no time for Xiaoxi. Pei Zhen'er often brought him soup to cheer him up. Alas, this time around, Xiaoxi no longer fell for such tactics. In my past life, I had been harsh with him more often than kind. Thus, Pei Zhen'er's tenderness and consideration often moved him. But this time, I indulged and protected him to the utmost. Pei Zhen'er's genuine affection paled in comparison to my feigned affection. Moreover, Pei Zhen'er genuinely wished to encourage him to study. A poor student equally dislikes anyone who urges him to study. The colder Xiaoxi treated her, The more anxious she became, the more she sought to please her son. I made no effort to intervene. Pretending my own busyness kept me unaware of the situation. On the day of Lady Xia's 60th birthday celebration, the Marquis's residence was bustling with activity. Since I had given birth to a stillborn child, the Marquis's residence hadn't hosted a banquet in years. This time, I invited numerous relatives and friends to celebrate the old lady's birthday. During the feast, I even pulled Pei Shinner aside to introduce her to the other ladies and young misses. Pei Shinner had also hoped to make an appearance at this birthday banquet, dressing herself up with particular elegance and beauty. Though she had given birth, her face remained small and rounded, her figure slender, making her appear no older than 17. Xia Qi, who had grown up surrounded by maidservants, couldn't help but be struck by Pei Shinner's appearance that day. He even showed her unusual patience when she spoke to him. Noticing Xia Qi's change in attitude, Pei Shinner seized the moment to draw closer. When she saw him returning to Tinglan Garden, she promptly followed with a tray of fruit. Meanwhile, I led a group of ladies and young misses on a garden tour. The gardens of the loyal and valiant Marquis's residence were quite renowned throughout the capital. Spring had arrived, and the exotic flowers and rare plants captivated everyone's interest. As we approached the gates of Tinglan Courtyard, someone remarked, "I've heard the Marquis of Loyal Valor's Tinglan Courtyard has an orchid house. Orchids are the gentlemen among flowers. I wonder if we might have the fortune to see some today." Xia Qi resided in Tinglan Courtyard, though his quarters were not as grand as those of the young ladies. I immediately dispensed with the formalities and led everyone inside to view the orchids. Unexpectedly, the moment they entered Tinglan Courtyard, they saw Xia Qi lying in Pei Shinner's embrace, licking the lip balm from her lips. Clang! The young lady who had suggested visiting Tinglan Courtyard was frail. She froze in place, dropping the hand warmer she held. Pei Shinner hurriedly pushed Xia Qi to his feet and scrambled into the inner chambers. But it was futile. I had introduced her to today's female guests just half an hour ago. Who wouldn't recognize her now? By the time the birthday banquet ended, everything that had transpired in Tinglan Courtyard had naturally reached the ears of the old madam and Xia Yuanhui. Never mind those two, the news had likely already spread quietly throughout the entire estate. One was the old madam's 17-year-old niece, the other, the 8-year-old legitimate son of the Marquis's household. They were worlds apart in generation. And then there were the unspeakable secrets behind it all. Having raised Piglet for over 5 years, I've come to understand him quite well, though he doesn't know Pei Shinner is his biological mother. At his age, he hasn't reached the stage of accusing his father of infidelity. He simply adores licking the lip balm from people's lips. Usually, he'd just nibble on the maid's lips in Tinglan Courtyard. But today, he even coveted the balm from Pei Shinner's lips. As for Pei Shinner, she'd long yearned for her son's affection, overjoyed that he'd willingly nestle in her embrace. She never imagined his true desire was the lip balm on her lips. Yet this incident sparked wild speculation. When it erupted publicly, not only did the old madam turn on her, but even Xia Yuanhui's expression darkened. Xia Qi was beaten mercilessly by Xia Yuanhui. After Xia Yuanhui had vented his fury, I went to Tinglan Courtyard to tend to Xia Qi, who lay too bruised to rise. As I applied ointment to his wounds, tears streamed down my face. The Marquis's heart is far too hard. Even if Pei Shinner is his beloved, my Xier is still the legitimate heir of this Marquis's household. If Pei Shinner becomes a concubine and bears a child, this Marquis will likely have no place for us, mother and son. Xia Qi, usually indolent, listened to my lament in rare stillness. Only as I prepared to leave did he speak in a deep voice. Mother, rest assured, this Marquis is mine. No one shall shake our position. A faint smile touched my lips. The show was about to begin. Ever since everyone caught Xia Qi eating the lip balm from her lips, Pei Shinner had come to realize one thing. She would never have a chance at becoming the main wife of the Marquis's household in this lifetime, even if Xia Yuanhui loved her deeply. The loyal and valiant Marquis's household could never tolerate a main wife with a stain on her reputation. Moreover, Xia Yuanhui now harbored reservations toward her. Being a woman of resolve, she immediately sought out the old lady, petitioning to become Xia Yuanhui's concubine. Having grown up together, Xia Yuanhui had married her, a woman of distinguished lineage, for the sake of the Marquis's future. The old lady had originally intended to keep Pei Zhen'er as Xia Yuanhui's concubine, but Pei Zhen'er was fixated on becoming the main wife, so she gave birth to Xia Shi outside the marriage. This deeply displeased the old lady. Now that Pei Zhen'er's reputation was tarnished, the old lady was no longer inclined to grant her wish to become a concubine. The matter of taking concubines was not kept from me. After all, as a mother, she saw nothing wrong with her son taking a concubine, just as she saw nothing wrong with scheming to make me bear Xia Yuanhui's illegitimate child. You don't know the sting until the rod falls on your own flesh. I put on an indifferent air, offering her advice: if he must take concubines, better to take two, so neither gains too much power. Madame Xia nodded in agreement. I set about finding suitable candidates. Now knowing Xia Yuanhui's preferences, he didn't favor dignified, proper women like me. He preferred those with innocent looks but hidden allure, seeking them in brothels, then packaging them with a pure, respectable background, was the perfect solution. On an auspicious day, I presented Xia Yuanhui with two new concubines. I expected Xia Yuanhui to spend his first night at Pei Zhen'er's residence, the embroidered smoke pavilion. Instead, he went to the Jade Light Pavilion, home of the newcomer Linglong. Linglong was a shrewd woman. Once Xia Yuanhui visited her, she naturally won him over. It would be difficult for concubine Pei to mend her relationship with Xia Yuanhui now. But Pei Zhen'er wasn't one to be pushed around. Having bided her time for over a decade to become the primary wife in my past life, she wouldn't sit idly by this time around. Their rivalry was their concern. I had more pressing matters to attend to. In the year Xia Qi turned 10, my elder sister-in-law gave birth to En'er. In my previous life, when En'er was born, Xia Yuanhui hinted I shouldn't return to the Liu household, claiming the old madam was unwell and needed my care. This time, with the two concubines vying for favor, I held no place before the old madam. I prepared 2 cartloads of lavish gifts and returned to the Liu residence to see my little niece. Her little face was rosy, the fine downy hair on her infant body clearly visible. Though her eyes weren't fully open, her eyeliner was long and defined. En'er is truly beautiful, I exclaimed sincerely. My elder sister-in-law gazed at her daughter, her face radiant with maternal love. Mother says she resembles you. May she grow up to be as exceptionally talented as her aunt. Hearing this stirred a wave of emotion within me. Who in the capital hadn't once praised Liu Yunwan, the legitimate daughter of Grand Tutor Liu, as a literary genius? Alas! Ever since I was bewitched into marrying Xia Yuanhui, my life had shrunk to the confines of the inner quarters. Day after day, I served my husband and mother-in-law with constant vigilance, my former brilliance utterly extinguished. Fortunately, heaven smiled upon me, granting a second chance. Sister-in-law, did Lady Zhou visit the estate today? She did. I'll take you to her. My elder sister-in-law handed En'er to the wet nurse and led me toward the Liu estate gardens. From afar, I spotted a radiant lady. Lady Zhou greeted me with a hint of surprise. She was the most charitable lady in all the capital. In my past life, she had sought me out, wishing to hire me as a teacher at the women's academy she founded. Yun Wan, your exquisite calligraphy and profound learning would be a tremendous asset to the young ladies at the academy. But I knew Xia Yuanhui disapproved of my public appearances, so I declined. My calligraphy and knowledge were ultimately imparted to Xia Jingxing. In return, He forged my signature to denounce the Liu family for treason, leading to the annihilation of my entire clan, 161 souls. This lifetime, I proactively offered to teach at the academy. And to excel in this role, I began meticulous preparations immediately after my rebirth. I taught under the name Master Yun at Lady Zhou's academy, altering my appearance during lectures to conceal my identity as a marquise. Lady Zhou approved of this, valuing the equality of knowledge. Yet I did not teach the mundane skills of household management or bookkeeping, nor the leisurely pursuits of literacy or poetry composition. I taught the grand principles, the principles of the imperial examinations, of attaining official rank, of governing the realm. As a child, I would sit in on my father's lessons to my elder brother, often grasping concepts before he did. Father once remarked that I possessed great talent, lamenting how it had been wasted in my previous life, because my teachings diverged from what most women were expected to learn. I had few students. When Lady Zhou suggested adjusting the curriculum, I shook my head. Let's wait and see. Those I wish to teach have never been ordinary women. By the time Xia Yuanhui noticed my frequent absences from the manor, the Marquis of Loyalty and Valor's household had descended into utter chaos. Pei Jin'er miscarried Linglong's child, and Linglong beat Pei Jin'er so severely she couldn't rise from her bed. My son, Xia Qi, defied Xia Yuanhui's discipline and threatened to kill his father. The old lady, overwhelmed by the series of upheavals, suffered a heart attack from the shock. Xia Yuanhui lay on the beauty couch in my Lanting courtyard, sighing. Wan'er, it's still peaceful here. What have you been occupied with lately? Why haven't you intervened with them? I cast a disdainful glance at the new fur blanket I'd laid on the beauty couch and replied indifferently. One is your beloved concubine, the other your childhood sweetheart. How could I presume to interfere? It's just that Linglong's pregnancy. It's truly a pity. Xia Yuanhui fell silent. Xia Shi was hopeless, beyond redemption. He'd hoped for another child, but this one was lost to Pei Jin'er. That woman probably can't tolerate anyone. I silently delivered the final blow. What right does she have to be intolerant? She's just a concubine. Does she think she's the mistress of the Marquis' household? Xia Yuanhui swept his sleeves and rose, snorting angrily before striding out with his hands clasped behind his back. Judging by his direction, he must have headed for Yaoguang Pavilion. The next day, I repeated these words before the old lady. She had been annoyed by my recent absence, but the mention of offspring made her fury boil over. For a moment, she forgot her original intent to scold me. While Xia Yuanhui might harbor some lingering affection for Pei Jin'er, the old lady was one to act decisively. She immediately ordered the matron to fetch Pei Jin'er. The Marquis' household already struggled with producing heirs. Jir and Xia Yuanhui were like oil and water. Now, the child she had finally conceived was lost. How could the Marquis' household possibly tolerate Pei Jin'er any longer? Cornered like a cornered dog, Pei Jin'er screamed on the spot. Even with all my faults, I bore the Marquis' son. Jir. How could I be inferior to that Liu woman who bore a stillborn? Jir. My Jir. Save your mother. Xia Yuanhui, who had been wavering, heard this and immediately stepped forward to slap her across the face. Why did I bear a stillborn child back then? It was because Xia Yuanhui listened to her scheming and poisoned my medicinal soup. Now I have only Xia Ji, this one son. Xia Yuanhui must regret it bitterly. This wasn't the first time Xia Ji had heard Pei Jin'er claim to be his mother. She wanted Xia Ji to save her, but Xia Ji wished she were dead. The old madam hadn't exterminated Pei Jin'er either, merely having the matron send her to the country estate. She understood her son's feelings for Pei Jin'er. She only hoped that once the home mansion welcomed another child, there might still be room for reconciliation. Yet she misjudged Linglong's cunning. Xia Yuanhui, now under the spell of the potion Linglong administered, was completely ensnared by her. his mind consumed by that single obsession. He could scarcely recall the childhood affection he once shared with Siaji. As for Siaji, the legitimate heir of the Marquis's household, faced with a concubine claiming to be his true mother, he couldn't help but fear that delay would only invite trouble. Siaji, after all, was the man who had topped the imperial examinations in his previous life and annihilated the entire Liu clan. Though he lacked proper education in this lifetime, his cunning and ruthless methods remained unchanged from his former existence. He cared not a whit about biological mothers or not. He knew only that if he were born of a concubine, his so-called friends would shun him. He would be the laughingstock, and the splendor and wealth he had grasped would become far more precarious. Poor Pei Zhen'er, upon seeing Siaji at the estate, had assumed he'd come to escort her back to the manor. Instead, Siaji killed her without hesitation. As she fell to her death, Pei Zhen'er, still in disbelief, asked Siaji, "I am your birth mother. How could you?" Siaji was born with such innate cruelty. "In my previous life, I raised him for over a decade, yet he still sent me to the execution ground without a second thought. What affection could this biological mother, who abandoned him after giving birth, possibly have?" After news of Pei Zhen'er's death reached the Marquis's residence, Siaji asked me one day, "Mother, shouldn't I be named Crown Prince now? The eldest son of the Changning Marquis is about my age and has already been named Crown Prince." "How splendid!" I gazed at him with feigned tenderness and sighed helplessly. "By rights, you should be named Crown Prince at your age. Unfortunately, your father has no notable achievements. His Majesty likely won't recall. How to make His Majesty remember? That was the question, perhaps through rewards or appeasement." Seeing Siaji's pensive expression, I knew my dear son wouldn't disappoint me. As for Xia Yuanhui, he and Linglong seemed to have discovered new ways to amuse themselves lately. Linglong often went out with him, though I never knew where they went. But since my rebirth, I've paid him little mind. I know him too well. He's nothing but a pleasure-seeking wastrel, a handsome face with no substance behind it. In my past life, he relied on me to manage the marquisate and on Xie Jingxing to bring honor to the family. This time around, he has nothing. He's just a worthless lump of mud. At Lady Zhou's academy, the student I'd been waiting for finally arrived. Ever since she began attending my lectures, I've brought my utmost focus to each session. After every lesson, she insists on engaging me in debate. She is a woman of remarkable insight. Madame Zhou expressed surprise that she didn't recognize such an extraordinary woman. I merely smiled without comment. That woman, I suspect, is like me. She's altered her appearance, deliberately concealing her true features. Lately, the matter of the Crown Prince had weighed heavily on Xieqi's mind. One day when I returned home, he was already waiting for me in the Lanting courtyard. "Has mother been very busy lately?" My heart tightened slightly, yet I replied softly, "Grandmother has been unwell recently, so I've been visiting her more often." "Cheer. Did you need something?" "Why does mother never take me to grandmother's home?" "Humph. In my past life, I invited wolves into my home. How could I ever let him set foot in the Liu residence again?" At this thought, I clenched my fists unconsciously. "Is something troubling you, mother?" Xiaxi was exceptionally perceptive. Seeing me raise my hand to rub my temples, Xiaxi did not press his question further. Instead, he continued, "Regarding the request for the title of Crown Prince, the loyal and valiant Marquis's household has long been without merit. If we delay further, it may do more harm than good. Father holds little sway before His Majesty, but I believe your maternal grandfather and uncle might be able to intercede. He certainly knows how to strategize. Yet, observing his recent actions, I dare not dismiss him as a child to be trifled with." I merely stalled. I shall mention this matter to your maternal grandfather and uncle next time I visit. Truthfully, Xiaozhi had a clear path to securing the title of crown prince. In fact, even the title of loyal and valiant marquis might be within reach. Half a month later, a major event unfolded from my past life. The emperor, while praying for rain at the Temple of National Protection, was attacked by assassins and gravely wounded. The throne nearly changed hands. The late emperor had only one son and one daughter. With the current emperor still without an heir, the eldest princess was nearly elevated to the throne. Yet His Majesty eventually regained consciousness. In my previous life, I regretted this outcome for a long time. Truthfully, the emperor was no match for the eldest princess in virtue and capability. Otherwise, he wouldn't have annihilated the entire Liu family over a wooden carving found beneath their crooked tree. Calling him incompetent would be an understatement. I discreetly relayed the intelligence about the planned assassination attempt at the Huaguosi Temple rain-praying ceremony to Xiaozhi. Though Xiaozhi was still waiting for the Liu family to petition for his appointment as crown prince, earning the title through merit would naturally be far more glorious. But dealing with assassins was dangerous, going alone could cost him his life. After days of contemplation, aided by the hints from the servant I had arranged, Xiaozhi finally devised a brilliant plan. He couldn't help but show off in front of me, his fox-like tail wagging. "Mother, if I inherit the title someday, wouldn't the entire marquisate fall under my command?" I replied softly, "Of course it would." "Then what about you, Mother? As the matriarch of the marquisate, wouldn't you still oversee me? Choose my wife? Manage the household?" I smiled at him and said, "Think about it. Since childhood, has your mother ever restrained you?" Xiaozhi chuckled. "Mother is the best. Unlike father, who only cares about me passing the imperial exams to bring glory to our family, showing me no affection at all." My eyes softened with tenderness, though inwardly I couldn't help but smile. Xiaozhi hadn't changed. Only this time, the object of his dislike wasn't me, it was Xia Yuanhuai's turn to taste that feeling. In my past life, I poured my heart into him, yet he showed no gratitude. Now, in this life, I've let him grow crooked, and he actually says mother is the best. Soon, the day arrived for the emperor's rain-praying ceremony. Though Xia Yuanhuai showed no ambition and had recently been consorting with Linglong and her sisters, he was still the son of a noble family. He had to bring Xiaozhi to the Huagu temple. The day proceeded smoothly until the emperor completed the final rain-praying ritual. Then, an arrow pierced the air. Immediately, a hail of arrows rained down. True to his nature, Xia Yuanhuai didn't think of saving the emperor. He just took off running. But he'd been taking too many drugs lately, leaving his legs weak. Plus, he was carrying Xiaozhi. How could Xiaozhi let him escape so easily? After several rounds of chase and evasion, Xia Yuanhuai finally grasped Xiaozhi's intent with disbelief. "You wretched beast! What do you hope to achieve? To see you die here? Of course! Your death here would be mistaken for collateral damage from the assassin. It could even be spun as a heroic sacrifice protecting His Majesty and capturing the assassin. The esteemed loyal and valiant marquis perishing thus, how could the emperor abandon his orphaned heir without compassion? With you dead, I won't even need to be the heir apparent, I'll directly inherit the title and become the new loyal and valiant marquis." 13-year-old Xiaozhi wore a dark, grim expression. Xia Yuanhuai was only in his 30s, in the prime of his life. Yet, having indulged in excessive drugs while consorting with Linglong and her sisters, he was now too weak to even escape Xiaozhi's grasp. Standing for too long during today's prayer ceremony had already left his legs trembling. Escape was impossible, whether from disbelief or raging fury. He ultimately fell by the arrow of his own son. Xiaozhi arranged his body to resemble a struggle with an assassin, completing the task. Yet with Xia Yuanhuai dead and the emperor attacked, the palace descended into chaos. Rewards and promotions were far off. Old lady Xia, upon hearing of her son's death, wept so bitterly she choked on her own breath and suffered a stroke. In my past life, when I gave birth to a stillborn child, she cursed me as unlucky, unable to keep a child alive. She called me an ill omen, bringing shame upon the loyal and valiant Marquis's household. When my Ninger died, she dismissed it as merely a stillborn, unworthy of the ancestral tomb or the family shrine. Even my daily weeping drew her scorn. She called me spoiled, claiming I'd cried away all the Marquis's fortune. This time, it was her turn to lose a son. I wanted to see how she'd endure it, how she'd remain calm and composed after losing the child she'd carried for 10 months. After she regained consciousness, I had servants whisper daily into her ear the gruesome details of Xia Yuanhuai's death. How the arrow failed to kill him outright, only for him to be stabbed over a dozen times. How his body was left exposed in the wilderness after the assassination, discovered with one leg devoured by beasts. She cycled through waking and fainting several times before lying utterly still in bed, lifeless as a corpse. 5 days passed, yet His Majesty still did not awaken. Xiaiji waited anxiously each day for news from the palace. But I knew the emperor would not awaken this time. The princess had made a different decision than in my past life. Court officials of 4th rank and above began frequenting the palace, while rumors spread among the people about whether the princess would ascend the throne. At the academy run by Lady Zhou, my students ceased to appear. With the emperor's fate uncertain, the entire capital held its breath. Xia Yuanhuai's funeral arrangements were rushed, mourners paid perfunctory respects, and those at the memorial banquet ate without relish. Everyone waited. Half a month later, as the parched land received its first timely rain of the year, the emperor passed away. The eldest princess ascended the throne as empress. An imperial edict arrived at the loyal Courage Marquis's residence. Xiaiji assumed it must be a reward for meritorious service. Though Xia Yuanhuai had failed to protect the late emperor, he had died defending the throne. The new sovereign would surely grant some compensation, and the Marquis's title would surely be secured. But he was disappointed. The new emperor's edict was addressed to me. I inherited my father's mantle, becoming the grand tutor of the realm. I felt not a flicker of surprise. I accepted the decree, expressed my gratitude, rewarded the eunuch who delivered it, and saw him out of the marquisate. Behind me, Xiaiji snapped out of his daze as if awakening from a dream. His eyes turned bloodshot, like those of a vicious wolf. Watching the eunuch's figure fade into the distance, he stepped forward and seized my throat. My dear mother, only today do I realize you possess such cunning. Grand tutor, with your vast learning, why did you never teach me? Teach you? Ignoring the discomfort of his grip on my neck, I sneered. You, a wretched son, born cold-blooded and vicious. Teaching you would only lead you to harm more people. Do you know why I named you Xiaiji? Because your nature is that of a swine, worse than a dog. Xiaiji faltered momentarily. In that split second, I wrenched free from his grasp. Maids and guards, alerted by the commotion, rushed to the scene. By the next day, news of the adopted son beating his legitimate mother at the loyal Courage Marquis's residence had spread throughout the capital. Our dynasty revered filial piety, and an adopted son assaulting his legitimate mother was a grave crime. The horrifying red marks on my neck only confirmed the rumors were true. This lifetime, the one imprisoned became Xiaiji. It was the same dungeon that had imprisoned the entire Liu family in my previous life. Yet the Liu family, being noble and distinguished, had maintained a semblance of dignity and integrity even in such harsh conditions. Xiaiji, however, had been raised in luxury and splendor for the past decade. Now, having fallen from such heights, his suffering was worse than death. In the dim light of the dungeon, Xiaiji, disheveled and filthy, clutched at the hem of my skirt, begging, "Mother, save me! After I inherit the marquisate, You'll be the most honored matriarch of the loyal courage Marquisate. You'll need a foster son anyway. I'll be your most obedient one. I tried to pull my skirt free from Xiaxi's filthy hands, but it wouldn't budge. After a moment's thought, I bent down and tore that section of fabric from my skirt. Xiaxi, you thought I cared about the Marquisate of Loyal Valor as much as you do. So you saw an opportunity to form an alliance. Little did you know that in my eyes, the Marquisate of Loyal Valor is utterly rotten. What good is a title with no heir? Abandon it! With that, I strode out, paying no heed to the remaining piece of my skirt still in Xiaxi's hand. Outside the dungeon, spring sunshine bathed the land. A year later, the Marquis of Loyal Courage House became a mere name without heirs. After the old lady passed away, His Majesty bestowed a new plaque, House of the Grand Tutor. I ordered the servants to hang it that very night. From then on, the House of the Loyal and Valiant Marquis ceased to exist in the capital. Enner truly resembled me, just as her mother had predicted, both in appearance and temperament. But this time, I stood tall without a trace of guilt, declaring, "My niece, Xiao Gu, is truly splendid." The end.